Hello, I'm your host, Merisapa, and this is Life Beyond the Checklist. I'm a life coach and conflict mediator, and together in this podcast, we explore how to build a life that feels more like yours and less like the one you were told you should want. Before we start, I'd like to invite you to follow the podcast, leave a comment, share it with someone you think might need it, and join the WhatsApp community, and also follow my free events on Eventbrite. Today, I'd like to talk about loneliness. Not necessarily the loneliness of being physically alone, but a kind of loneliness that to me feels even sadder, which is feeling lonely while surrounded by people. And when I say people, unfortunately, I mean the people we love the most. So let's start. How is it possible that we live in a world with millions of people, billions of people, and yet so many of us feel lonely? And how is possible to come home from spending time with friends and somehow feel even more alone than before we met them? And I wonder if you ever found yourself there. Because I found myself in this situation last week, and I've been thinking a lot about this subject. Because last week I met some friends that I hadn't seen in a while, and I was genuinely happy to see them. I saw them separately, one by one, and every single time I came home, I was feeling frustrated, empty, and strangely lonely. After it happened more than once, I started asking myself why seeing a friend could leave me feeling more alone rather than less alone. As I reflected on it, I realized there was a common thread running through many of those interactions. The person in front of me was often on their phone while I was talking. They didn't seem particularly interested in my life and didn't ask me much about what was happening in my world. And because I tend to test my assumptions before jumping to conclusions, I tried something. So I started talking about something personal and quite painful that had happened. And the response was mostly indifference. So there was no question, no curiosity, no real empathy, just like silence or a quick, yeah, yeah. And then the conversation moved somewhere else. And I can say that in that moment, I felt angry. I had thoughts like, this isn't fair. I'm such a good friend and I don't get the same back. Or like, oh, maybe I don't even want these people in my life. In other words, I felt lots of resentment about their behavior. But because I'm a conflict mediator, guys, I wanted to apply what I studied, right? So I wanted to look a little deeper because, when we feel anger, often it's not about anger. There are other emotions sitting underneath it. And that's how I discovered that what I was actually feeling was loneliness. Loneliness not only during interactions, but afterwards. After those conversations, I felt transparent, almost invisible. So I started asking myself a question: what is friendship for me? And the answer that came up was just simple. Because for me, friendship is presence. It's listening, it's curiosity, it's attention, and above all, it's empathy rather than sympathy. And I want to spend a little bit of time on this distinction because I think that what we are often taught to do is sympathize rather than empathize. So, sympathize sounds like this: oh, yeah, that happened to me as well. And before we realize, the story has moved from the person back to me. Empathy feels different. Empathy means staying with the other person's experience without immediately projecting our own story on theirs. It means allowing them to finish their story, to feel heard, maybe to feel calmer or reassured. And only then, if it still feel useful, saying something like, oh, something similar happened to me too, and this is how I experience it. Because that allows the other person not to feel abandoned halfway through their emotions. And presence also means something very practical. At least to me, it means putting the phone away. If I genuinely need to use it, I apologize and I ask for a pause, rather than splitting my attention between two places at once. Actually, if I have an appointment after seeing a friend, what I tend to do personally is to set an alarm for myself so I allow my brain to forget about future plans and simply enjoy the moment. So the alarm is going to do its work and remind me that I need to leave while I keep present. I find this strategy incredibly useful because it keeps me away from my phone to check the time and helps me to stay out of thoughts about what comes next. Then, in practical terms, friendship for me also means not interrupting someone while they're speaking. It means not projecting my own beliefs, judgments, or emotion onto the other person's experience. It means resisting the temptation to immediately jump into, oh, you're right, that person is an asshole. And instead, becoming curious about what the situation created inside the person who is sitting in front of me. So instead of like feeding there are those hard emotions, I prefer to ask what emotions came up, what needs were touched, what hurt, what mattered. And presence also means giving importance to things that might not be important to me, but are clearly important to the person sharing them with me. So if someone is bringing something to me that it matters to them, it don't really matters to me, I will try to not minimize that simply because I personally wouldn't react in the same way. So imagine that a friend is saying how bad their sleep is. You may find the subject boring, but maybe for the other person, it's not really about the sleep. And that's the point. But it's the way the bad sleep is affecting their daytime. So behind a boring subject, there is something important for them. So after this realization about my definition of friendship, another thought arrived. I realized I was expecting people to behave in the exact way I behave with them. So to have the same definition of presence that I have. And of course, that's impossible, right? Because nobody owns me the same kind of presence that I choose to give them. The fact that I decide to be completely present with somebody doesn't mean that they have to show up exactly in the same way, right? But at the same time, it doesn't mean that I have to accept what leaves me feeling empty, transparent, and lonely. Because I've realized that there are certain things that genuinely don't feel good for me. And I don't want just to get angry with my friends or resentful because I don't necessarily think the people acting like that because of selfishness or lack of care. I think that there's something else going on. To look from a wider perspective, I think many of us are living life that are, like so full. But when I say full, I don't mean authentic. I mean busy, so rushed, so saturated with responsibilities, notifications, problems to solve, that simply like there's no space for presence. And presence also isn't particularly valued by our society. People who look less present, let's say, in relationships, maybe they don't even have time and space to be present with themselves. So they need someone to hold space for them because their lives move too quickly for them like to stop and notice what they are feeling and what other people are feeling. So they don't have space, they don't have time to actually look at other people's vulnerability and be empathetic towards them. So for this reason, I've decided not to confront my friends with accusations, but instead to ask for what I need. I decided that next time, before I meet a friend, I might simply ask, do you feel you have space to really be present with me today or the day that we're going to meet? Not because I believe that, again, these people don't care about me, but actually, I just think that, no, they are in this vortex of modern life, and we just stop noticing the absence of presence. So maybe we can just ask for it. If you're experiencing the same like me, maybe you can just ask for it. But I also want to stay open to the possibility that the answer might be no, because I don't want to demand presence. I want to ask for presence. And this is different because demanding presence is an expectation, while asking for presence leave the possibility to receive a no. And there's a reason behind that, and I accept the reason. Because sometimes life happens, no? And we simply don't have space to hold somebody else's word for a while. And that's okay too. At least then I know that I'm going into the meeting to support rather than be supported. And perhaps another moment will come when the roles are reversed. And honestly, I think this creates much more authentic relationships because the people around me know what I need and I know what they can realistically offer. So I'll try this and I'll let you know what it goes. And I would also like to add another thing that I've been noticing. I think that one of the illnesses of our society is this constant me. So it's not only my experience, but perhaps many people's experience. Maybe many people are trapped in relationship where it's all about the other person. Or perhaps you may realize that you bring quite a lot of me in your relationships. So, how often do you leave conversations realizing that you spend 2 hours just listening to somebody and there was no space for you, or maybe not even a single question about you? And how often do we remain then in those relationships because we feel useful there, appreciated, seen, valued? While at the same time, those relationships quietly drain all our energy. Because if you come home with an headache every single time, or if you feel exhausted after some interactions and you have no energy left for anything else, well, perhaps something important is happening there in the relationship. And, another illness of our society, I think it's this strange loneliness we carry around because there is often more space for solutions than emotions. So there's no patience to listen to people's emotions. There's only space to bring solutions to other people, to bring advices. And there's more space for productivity than for loneliness, and more space for interaction than for connection. We are constantly searching for community and closeness, while often looking for them in places that are designed for quick, superficial interactions like social media. So I'd love to leave you with a few questions this week. What is friendship for you? If you're experiencing a similar situation, if you feel lonely in your relationships, put down a definition of friendship for you. What makes you feel welcome, seen, appreciated, and loved? And also, can you recognize any recurring patterns in the relationships that leave you feeling frustrated or lonely? And also, what kind of community would you love to have around you? And I'd really love to read your inputs in the comments about this because I found it fascinating that cities all around the world are full of circles, communities, and group of strangers trying to meet each other and create something meaningful together. So why do we have such a strong need to create communities with people we don't know? And this is a question I ask myself that I'm also building this community of people who want an authentic life and feeling outsiders in our society. And I think that maybe it's because many of our old relationships no longer meet our needs. Or maybe because people are so busy, they're only giving 2 hours per week or per month of their full presence to a community that shares the same values, make them feel nourished. And perhaps that is the real challenge of our time, learning, even for a couple of hours per week, to put out the endless noise of me, and our problems and life that run inside our heads, and to be completely present with another person. So I'd love to invite you this week to answer the questions that I ask and also notice how it feels both to receive presence and to offer it without distractions. And I have a feeling that it might change more than we expect. It may make us feel more anchored to the present moment, more connecting to ourselves and the other, and more nourished and less lonely once we get home. I wish a beautiful time. Bye.